I will never not be a soldier.
Colin Powell, a soldier turned statesman, made history on many fronts. The first African American and youngest chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and later, the first African American Secretary of State.
So I've always felt strongly that you should try to solve conflicts in this world through negotiations, through diplomacy. Anytime we can solve a problem that way and not use force and satisfy our objectives, let's push for that.
Powell grew up in the Bronx, New York. His parents emigrated from Jamaica. By his own admission, he was not an outstanding student.
It's been amusing over the years to have people come up to me and say, well, General Powell, you're chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. When did you graduate from West Point? Couldn't have gotten in.
He enrolled in the City College of New York. Geology was his major, but the ROTC became his passion. Powell flourished as a cadet, and after graduating, excelled as a soldier. He served 2 tours in Vietnam before earning a prestigious fellowship working for the Office of Management and Budget during the Nixon era in 1972. Afterwards, Powell returned to his troops, eventually becoming a general, and went back to the White House in 1987 as President Reagan's national security advisor. Then, in 1989, the general became the highest-ranking officer in the U.S. military when President George H.W. Bush named him chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Our strategy to go after this army is very, very simple. First, we're going to cut it off, and then we're going to kill it. How long have you been here? You been here the whole time?
Powell became a household name during the first Gulf War. His policy of overwhelming force against Iraq became known as the Powell Doctrine.
I express my sincere thanks to each and every one of you for being here to share my final day in uniform.
After a distinguished 35-year career, Powell retired from the Army in 1993. 10 years later, the United States would become involved in another Gulf War, and Powell again played a key role.
My colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Then Secretary of State Powell made a case in front of the UN Security Council, arguing that Iraq posed a grave threat to the world because, he said, they had weapons of mass destruction. The following month, the U.S. invasion began. The war lasted more than 8 years. No weapons of mass destruction ever turned up.
I regret it now because the information was wrong.
After 4 years as President George W. Bush's Secretary of State, Powell returned to private life. He spent his civilian years empowering youth through his projects, America's Promise Alliance and the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership.
We're going to go and educate the kids who are most in need. And when I heard their stories, I said, this is where I belong. I'm home again.
General Colin Powell, a leader and a patriot, who devoted a lifetime to service.
And Wolf Blitzer joins us now. Wolf, that lifetime dedicated to service and what he got out of it too in terms of his leadership style, not just in the military, but what he brought with him to the government and even after. That is such a key part, I think, of what people are looking at this morning.
You know, it's so true, Erica, because, he did devote his whole life to serving our country before he joined the military, after he was in the military, and certainly as elsewhere in the U.S. government when he was Secretary of State and in the private sector ever since. He just wanted to help people. And whenever I would meet with him, and we would meet occasionally, we'd have dinner once in a while, he would remind me of his roots growing up, a kid who was the son of immigrants, growing up in the Bronx and with not much. He was always so appreciative of what the United States of America enabled his family to do, his country to do, enabled him to do. And he would always say, sort of like, my parents would always say, only in America could something like this happen. And it was always so meaningful to me to hear that coming from someone who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a retired four-star general, someone who was later Secretary of State. And, it was just a true American, a true world leader who commanded such great respect. So that's why this is a really sad day for all of us who got to know him over the years.